So this is about the origination of each of the 5 aggregates. And when we talk about the 5 aggregates, we actually refer to a sentient being. So rupa here refers to only the body, because if you look at the definition of rupa, it is said in the 2 suttas. The first sutta, it talks about the 4 great elements and matter that is derived from the 4 great elements. And then the other sutta, it talks about why it is called rupa. It's rupa because it deforms due to heat and cold and due to flies and so forth. So you can see very clearly that these refer to the physical body of a sentient being rather than the outside physical matter. So the origin, it says, is nutriment. Okay, this is very obvious because the very moment that rebirth takes place in the womb, in the case of our human existence, then from that very moment, the nutriment of that embryo is derived from that of the mother. From the mother, the nutriment will flow into the embryo, and then when the fetus, the baby is born, then they will need external nutriment. And once the baby is able to stand on his own feet, or the child is able to eat of himself, then there's volition involved in wanting to take nutriment whenever one feels hungry. Even though the child may not be able to feed itself, the child will start to scream or cry, and then the poor mother will have to figure out what it is crying for. It could be so many other things. So I guess the mother would have the intuition to know that the child is hungry and wants to eat. And so if he feeds the child, and if he stops crying, that means, okay, you have gratified his intention of wanting to eat. But if he keeps on crying, that's not what he wants. He wants something else, and you have to figure out what he wants. Okay, but we are talking about rupa. So the origin of form, of course, is nutriment. The moment you stop feeding, then you are going to die very soon. There is a case of a monk during the Buddhist time who was suffering from a terminal illness. And then he decided that there's no point continuing to live because he's going to die anyway. So he decided to stop eating and stop drinking. And you wonder whether that is breaking the first precept, intentionally taking life. But the Buddha actually allowed the monks to do that. He said that if you are suffering from a terminal illness and you know very well that there's no way you can get cured, you are allowed to starve yourself or stop eating and drinking for the death to take its natural course. So because you stop eating or drinking, you stop providing nutriment for the body, then automatically all the material elements in the body will deteriorate because there's no nutriment for it to be sustained. Now for Vedana, Saññā, and Saṅkhāra, feeling, perception, and Saṅkhāra, they all depend on contact, sense experience. You see, if none of your senses are working, then you won't have any feeling, perception, or volition, right, as somebody pointed out. It's because your eyes see something moving, and then you recognize it, and then you have fear because it's something which you think is dangerous, and that will cause a volition to either run away or to protect yourself. Fight or flee mentality. So these are all dependent on contact or sense experience. Without the sense experience, none of these will arise. Now, consciousness, the origination for consciousness is nāma-rūpa. And we saw in the previous section, viññāṇa is actually the origin of nāma-rūpa. It's a condition for nāma-rūpa to arise. But here in this extract about the 5 aggregates, you see that nāma-rūpa is the origin of viññāṇa. As someone pointed out earlier, Dr. Chan pointed out that it is like 2 blades of grass leaning on one another. They are interdependent. One depends on the other. So you can look at it either way. Either this one is the origination of that one, or the second one is the origination of the first one. Okay, now we go on to the second part of discussion topic number 2. Here, this is the riddle where we talk about how saṅkhāra construct conditioned form as form. Okay, so as I said earlier, there must be an intention to take nutriment. Because there is an intention to take nutriment, and then nutriment is taken, that's how this additional new rupa is created. That's why form constructs conditioned form as form. Based on conditioned form, then you have an intention to take nutriment, and that will create new form. That's how it works. Also for feeling, there is an intention to have a certain type of feeling. Let's say you experience something very pleasant in the past. Maybe it's nice food, some delicious food, and then a memory of that food arises and you're hungry, and then there's intention of wanting to re-experience that nice feeling of eating that food. So that is how that first intention of wanting to re-experience that past feeling will create a whole other new string of intentions to gratify the desire and recreate that feeling. Okay, that's how saṅkhāra construct conditioned vedana as vedana, to create a new type of vedana based on the past. It's the same with perception. As I said earlier on also, it's the same. You perceive something of the past and you want to see that thing again. And it's actually linked to feeling, because it's the perception or memory of something which you like, then you want to pursue it. You want to recreate the nice feeling. You want to experience that perception again to re-experience that nice feeling. Also in the example that was given of that moving object in the garden, if it's a snake, you perceive it as a snake. And then that perception is based on the past. And then that creates another new perception that this snake is dangerous and it may bite me. Although it may not be dangerous, but you think it is. And this is a new perception. And of course, intention to have another type of intention. Now, from the very first one already, we see that if there is a nice feeling that you had in the past, when you experience something and you remember it and you want to re-experience that feeling, then there's a whole series of intentions, creating another intention, creating another intention to finally gratify your desire. Give you another example. It's just like this workshop. A couple of months ago, it was broadcasted, and then you saw a poster, and then you decided that you want to participate. Now, why? That's because of past experience. Maybe you had participated in my workshop before and you found it entertaining, enjoyable, and educational. So you decided that you want to participate. So once you see that, then that's an intention of wanting to re-experience whatever feeling you had there, a nice feeling of satisfaction and so forth. And then that will lead to a whole series of other intentions. That first intention of wanting to participate will lead to another intention of clicking in to register, and then later on to click in to download the material, and then after that to put in the effort, the intention to study the material and get involved in pre-workshop discussions and so forth. Okay, so all these are all linked, one intention leading to another intention. Now, talking about consciousness, first of all, I want to bring to your attention the fact that consciousness cannot arise by itself. Consciousness must always arise together with feeling and perception. This is found in Mahavedala Sutta, where Āyasmā Aggacitta asked Āyasmā Sariputta about this. He asked him whether feeling, perception, and consciousness are conjoined or are they not conjoined. So Āyasmā Sariputta answered that they are conjoined, they are not disjoined, and it is impossible to separate each of these states from the others. So you see, because of in the previous three aggregates, we have feeling, perception, and saṅkhāra. Yeah, feeling and perception, when they arise, the consciousness must also arise. Feeling and perception is also part of nāma-rūpa. Yeah, nāma-rūpa has got 5 elements: feeling, perception, and then you have volition, cetanā, which is also saṅkhāra, and then you have phassa, sense experience, and then also you have attention. Right? So this consciousness has to arise together with feeling and perception. But it's interesting that in this citation, it doesn't say that saṅkhāra must arise with consciousness. It only says that feeling, perception, and consciousness are conjoined. He didn't say that saṅkhāra also must be there. So this implies that saṅkhāra is optional. Sometimes it might be there, sometimes it may not be there. Okay? So that's why that consciousness will arise from the intention of what you want to have. Say you want to re-experience a nice feeling that you had in the past, you need to have the intention. But that nice experience you had in the past is also based on consciousness. Without consciousness, like without a solvent, you will not have a solution. Right? So feeling is just a solute. If you don't have the solvent, the feeling will not be able to manifest itself. So even if you want to have the first one, you want to have the intention to re-experience a type of feeling you had in the past, consciousness is also involved. Right? So it will arise concurrently, simultaneously, that of feeling and perception. Now, in regard to saṅkhāra as a volition, from the citation we saw that there is an implication that saṅkhāra need not arise together with consciousness, although feeling and perception must. So, based on the Abhidhamma, the feelings that are related to the cittas of the 4 senses, of the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth, on the tongue, the feeling is always neutral. There's no good or bad feeling in regard to the citta of any of these 4 senses. Right? But the saññā that arises together in the citta, associated with the respective sense base, is a very rudimentary sort of perception. As you can see in the sutta, it says that it sees color only. Yeah, it tastes taste only. It cannot really differentiate whether this is char kway teow or Hokkien mee. Cannot really differentiate whether this is a man or a woman. That's not the job of the saññā in the citta that is associated with the 4 sense consciousnesses. Okay, so the feeling is neutral and the saññā is very rudimentary, and there's no saṅkhāra. Now, speaking in a practical experiential way, if your sense organs are in good working condition, and then its respective sense object becomes very prominent, like your nose is in good working condition, and then somebody comes into the room bringing in a durian, you can't help but smell. Yeah, like just now when we were having the presentation, while this presenter was sharing his group presentation, we heard some dogs barking. We cannot just isolate the sound and say we don't want to hear the dog barking, I just want to hear this presenter. We got no choice. It's not a matter of choice. So there is no volition involved in these 4 senses. Okay? So when the sense base and the sense consciousness are in good working condition, and then the sense object comes in its field of awareness very strongly, you got no choice but to be conscious of it. On the other hand, for the body sense, the feeling can be pleasant or painful. So either you are comfortable or not comfortable. There's no such thing as neutral. If you are neutral, that means you are comfortable, right? If it's not painful, that means it's neutral, that means you're comfortable. So it's either you're comfortable or not comfortable. That's all. There's no in between. The saññā that is associated with the citta of the body is also the same. It is also very rudimentary. it will just experience heat as heat. Yeah, because you can call heat by so many different names according to your language that you're using, but then the basic experience is that the body sense is able to recognize that it is heat. But the body sense is more intelligent, far more intelligent than the other four senses. The saññā or the recognition may not be so rudimentary, because when you eat something and it goes into your body, when it goes into your mouth, the first thing is, there is an enzyme that is secreted by your glands. I think it's called ptyalin, where digestion starts to take place. Yeah, we'll start to digest it in your mouth. There's only a certain type of material. It's not protein. Protein is not digested in your mouth. I think there's carbohydrate, if I'm not mistaken, that is digested in your mouth. It starts there. But then the enzyme for the protein will only be secreted when it reaches the stomach and maybe the intestines. Basically the stomach, because you need a very acidic base to digest the proteins. Okay, so the digestive system is so intelligent that it's able to recognize what sort of food it is, what class of food. Is it carbohydrate? Is it complex carbohydrate, or is it simple carbohydrate, or is it protein, amino acids, or glucose, or whatever? And once it recognizes it, then it's able to secrete the relevant enzyme at the right rate to assimilate or digest that particular food, if the body is in good working order. If the body is not in good working order, some of the organs are malfunctioning, there's some imbalance somewhere, then that's a different matter that it may not be able to digest. Yeah, but what I'm saying is that in terms of the body, there is an intelligence and there is also saṅkhāra. There is intentional saṅkhāra in the body. The body can, once it recognizes something, it can instruct the glands to produce something at a certain rate. So that requires recognition, which is saññā, and also requires volition. It's the same also with your immune system. When a bacteria enters your body and it's something that has entered before, the immune system will be able to recognize it, and then it will instruct the body to produce the same type of antibody that was successful in the past in combating that bacteria. Wow, well, it's something new, and then it's like the COVID-19 virus, and then it goes into your system and it upsets all your system and it goes haywire, then that's a different story. The virus is cleverer than the human immune system. Okay, so there is saṅkhāra involved. Another interesting phenomenon is also found in yogis. Some yogis, when they meditate and their minds and bodies become calm and relaxed, then the body might start to move. Some of them might sway very gently, some of them may shake very vigorously in various ways, and some of them, the body may go in a certain posture that is normally impossible to balance, but it can still balance itself. And this is not the intention of the mind. This is caused by the intention of the body intention. The intention, the saṅkhāra that is associated with the body consciousness. We Chinese believe in qi philosophy, and according to qi philosophy, the reason why you have all these ailments is because the qi is not moving smoothly, it is blocked in some places. And the philosophy is such that when the body and mind becomes relaxed, then the qi will move naturally of itself to unblock the blockages. But if the mind and the body are tense, your conscious mind is too dominant, tries to be too clever, thinks of too many things, trying to control the body. In that case, the ability of the qi is undermined and it cannot move naturally in order to heal itself, to unblock the blockages. Depends on your meditation teacher. If your meditation teacher does not believe in qi therapy, then he will ask you to stay absolutely still, because there is one idea that when you're meditating, you must stay absolutely still. And yet, there are also cases of people who stay absolutely still and deliberately look at the pain, focus on the pain until the pain completely disappears. And there can be something very dramatic, and that could actually heal a long-standing physiological problem. So there are actually two ways of approaching it, of healing when you're doing vipassana meditation. One way is this one, where you focus on the pain, that is provided your samadhi is strong. Yeah? And the reasoning behind this is that when the samadhi is strong, then the body produces cittaja rūpa, or wholesome or good, pure matter, mind-made matter. And this pure mind-made matter can somehow get rid of those things that make you suffer. I think modern science has found out that when the mind is in samadhi, then this produces what we call an endorphin, which is equivalent to morphine, and is able to suppress all this pain in the body. That's why samatha yogis can sit very long without any pain. But once they get out of that, of course, the pain will come. Okay, so the other way is, if you are meditating under a teacher who understands and believes in qigong therapy, he will ask you to go ahead and move. Allow the body to move of itself, but then be mindful, be aware. So in that case, then the body will move, and sometimes very vigorously, but then you will find that after that session, you feel very much better. And there are some also who have been healed through this sort of meditative qigong therapy. So this is the intention of the body. But the intention of the mind can actually override that of the body. So like in the first case, where the yogis are asked not to move and to keep on noting the pain until it disappears, that is the intention of the mind overriding that of the body. In the second case of applying qigong therapy during meditation, this is allowing the body intention to move of itself. Now, although there's intention in the body, this intention, it does not constitute karma in the sense of creating a potential energy for giving results in a future life. Well, karma is created because there is volition, but that karma is only restricted to this lifetime, as long as there is this same body there, this similar group of 5 aggregates, which will expire at the moment of death. Okay, so this does not constitute the saṅkhāra in the law of dependent origination. Now, it can be the saṅkhāra in the 5 aggregates, but not in the dependent origination. Because the saṅkhāra in the dependent origination is all about future rebirth. Then becomes the mind. The citta that is associated with mind consciousness contains 3 types of feelings. It can be painful, it can be pleasant, it can be neutral. Alright, and the saññā, of course, is more complex. And that's what earlier on some of you were talking about, making a mental construct of an object that is perceived through any of the 5 senses. The 4 senses actually only receive raw data. They are like the zeros and ones in your computer. They have no software to interpret that. The body sense is special. It has a special software to process this raw data within its own scope. Alright, so the saññā in the mind, this is the one that is more complex. This is the saññā in the mind that is able to recognize the object that one sees with the eyes as a snake. Right? And also the memory that arises of a snake being a dangerous animal, that is also arising in the mind. The citta associated with mind consciousness. It does not arise in the citta associated with seeing consciousness. Now, so this one is the saṅkhāra in the mind the intention that arises in the mind. Now, this is the one that will constitute karma. So there are two types of karma: the karma for this very lifetime, and then the karma that will give rise to future rebirths. So the saṅkhāra in the scheme of the five aggregates can refer to the volitional formations or the constructions of arahants and non-arahants. Whereas in the law of dependent origination, the saṅkhāra there is only in reference to non-arahants, because the law of dependent origination starts with avidya. The five aggregates is already here because of past avidya, but once it's here and you become an arahant, there's no more avidya. But still, because there is cetanā, it will give results. So the results will be in this very life, it will not be carried forward to the next. Whereas for non-arahants, they create karma that will have results in this present life as well as in future lives. Any questions?
Bhante, good afternoon. Just now in the last slide, right, there is the intention in the blue color and the intention in the red color. Can you please explain again the difference?
The difference is that intention in blue color will only give results in this present life. It will not give results in the future life. All right. Whereas the one in red, in the mind, that intention in the mind, for arahants, it will give rise to results only in this present lifetime. But for non-arahants, the results could be for this present lifetime as well as future lifetimes.
So, Bhante, does it mean that if the intention is from the mind, the karmic effect is actually stronger?
Of course it is. Definitely. You remember that in the law of dependent origination, we have these mental volitional formations, and then verbal volitional formations, and bodily volitional formations, right? And I said that all of these actually stem from the mind. It's only expressed bodily or verbally.
Bhante, in terms of kayasaṅkhāra versus citta-saṅkhāra or mano-saṅkhāra, meaning to say for kayasaṅkhāra, that can never be known in terms of the intention. Like for example, when our body digests the food, so we will never know what is the intention that causes that. Like for example, when we meditate, right, the body moves vigorously. We can only experience the effect, but that intention couldn't be known. But in terms of from mind construct, the intention, for example, you wanted to do something, the liking or disliking, that can be known. But for body, yeah.
Okay, you see, where do you get these terms, kayasaṅkhāra, vipassanā, and citta-saṅkhāra? In which context?
It could be my personal interpretation.
So you have to see which context these things are used. Well, you cannot give a blanket thing and say kayasaṅkhāra, vipassanā, and mano-saṅkhāra. You see, in the context of the dependent origination, yeah, as I said earlier, all these stem from the mind. It is called kayasaṅkhāra because it is expressed physically, bodily. It is called vipassanā because it is expressed verbally, right? But it all stems from the mind. If it only happens in the mind and is not expressed physically or verbally, then it's mano-saṅkhāra. You get it? But in the case of the five aggregates, it's different. In the case of the five aggregates, is there anything mentioned of kayasaṅkhāra? No, right? In the extracts of the suttas that were given, it is mentioned volition connected with form, volition connected with sound, and so forth, isn't it? Right? There's nothing mentioned about kaya, vati, and mano-saṅkhāra in the five aggregates. So you have to be careful how it is used.
Yeah. So that is more like intention that causes bodily action or verbal actions rather than from the dependent origination perspective.
Yeah, that is from the dependent origination perspective. Yeah. Now, what I'm talking about, the body, swaying and all that, actually you can see the intention. It's because you can see the intention, although you don't know the cause of the intention, you can see the intention arising. And then if you want to override it, the mind can override and say, don't move. And then it won't move, I mean, you don't say lah. You go against that intention, override with another intention of the mind, which says, don't move. Then it won't move, because the mind can override it.
Bhante, very interesting just now your summary, especially the one you mentioned about seeing a stick and it appear as a snake in your mind. That's where all the karmic intention will arise, how you react with a snake instead of a stick. What I like to touch on is we were told in meditation is see things as they are. Vipassanā is see and not what you want them to be. So, and the other thing which we were always told, but nobody seems to say anything, is you have to be in the present moment. When we do meditation, we have to be in the present moment. Our mind must be in the present moment. But when we see things, we know that the perception is based on our memory that is in the past. So we have used our memory to project what we want to see our mind. We don't see it as a stick, but we see that it is a snake because last time we have seen it something like a snake. And then because we see from the past and not see it as the present, which is a stick, then we have this intention, which I want to do something to it. It seems to stretch from the past that drags us to the future, but not staying in the present. That's how I would like your comment, because whenever we do meditation, we say must be present. But yet I don't find this thing when we talk about vipassana present. They say that watch your breath, see the rise and fall. All these are present moment happening. But we were not told that it's present. In fact, nowhere in the sutta it says that it is in the present. I mean, to me, what I read, it could be somewhere, but what I find that past, future, and present, it appears not there, but it appears from the way we are reacting. We are always thinking that we are in the past, and then we are going into the future. So we are never in that position, right in the middle. And that is where there's no suffering. But when we are in the past and in the future, we regret the past, we fear the future, that's where all the suffering comes. I would like Bhante to give some comments on this. Sadhu.
I could give a whole Dhamma talk on what you asked. Yeah, so many things inside there, that needs clarification. But anyway, that's one thing that I just want to bring your attention to. Actually, when you said, if you see a stick as a snake, then you are in the past. But if you see a stick as a stick, then you're in the present. You said something like that, right?
Yes.
That's not right. That's also in the past. How you know it's a stick?
Well,
it's a past experience, right?
Not our experience last time. We see something like that. It was a stick, then it was a stick. But when we see the stick and we thought that it was a snake, but that snake was we seen last time.
I know. Same, the stick that you see now is also based on your perception of something that looks like that, and it's also a stick. It's the same, it's based on past perception. It's a recognition, that's why it's called recognition, recognize something that you have already known before in the past. Saññā is a resultant. There's no volition involved in saññā. You see something and then automatically you label it, you recognize it, then that is a product of past conditioning. But how you react to it, that is what will make your new karma. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, the other things you talked about being the present and all that, that one is, I will have to give a whole Dhamma talk to tell you about it. I cannot do it in this short 10 minutes. Okay.
You mentioned about, because arahats still have cetanā, so it still produce kamma, but pertaining to this life.
Right, correct.
Okay, I just want to clarify this because quite often we say arahat will not create further karma. So that particular karma is related to rebirth.
Yes, you will not create any karma that will give rise to rebirth, to a future life. It's very obvious, isn't it? Like an arahant also needs to go to the toilet, right? Is that a karma? The karma is when you get there and you relieve yourself, you feel relief. An arahant needs to eat when he's hungry, right? What is the coming result is that you will keep on sustaining this body.
Hi, good afternoon, Bhante.
Hello.
I have a quick question about karma, where you mentioned some karma will ripen this lifetime and some can be brought forward to other next lives. My question is, say if I pass away and then there were quite a lot of karma that was supposed to ripen for this life, does it mean it ceases once I die and it would not be basically brought forward to my future lives? Thanks.
No, this one is also something not easy to explain. But let's say if you base it on the Abhidhamma. When you create karma, when this intention of doing something arises, it arises through 17 so-called thought moments, citta moments, mental events. And out of these 17, there are 7 towards the end that are karmic in nature. The rest are not karmic. Some of them are resultant, some of them are just neutral. Out of these 7, the first one will give rise to effects in this present life. The last one, number 7, can give rise to results in the next life. And then the rest in between can give rise to results anytime between the next life until you attain parinibbana. No one can be free of any karma because some of them will follow you. All right, for example, you study very hard for exams. That karma will not bring forward to the next life, right? What is supposed to ripen in this life, if it doesn't ripen in this life, when it gets on to the next one, no more. It's called defunct karma. It won't give results anymore. All right, but the other 5 in between, they can still give results, depending on conditions. Okay?
Is it okay to decide for the dying person whether to continue nutriment?
Okay, that will be dependent on the advice given by the doctor. All right? Because the doctor will tell you, we have already monitored this patient, although it's on life support machine, all the organs are not functioning. The person is only kept alive by all this apparatus. The doctor might advise you, no point hooking that person to the life support machine, and might ask you to take the patient home. Based on the advice of the doctor, you can do that, because this is a natural process. But it is different from euthanasia, when the person is still alive, but is suffering, and his organs are still functioning, but the person is suffering a lot, and then you purposely disconnect the life support machine, or you purposely administer something to shorten the person's life, then that is different. If it's a natural process, it's okay, with the consent of the patient, if it had consented before. If not, then you can also make that decision based on the doctor's advice. Right, second?
Second is rebirth intentional?
Yes, of course. Rebirth is intentional. It is because of this desire to continue living. Craving is a cause for rebirth. The cause for craving is ignorance, not knowing that having any form of rebirth, as long as there are the 5 aggregates, there will always be suffering. So because you don't know this, then you have this desire of wanting to exist. So that's why this will create rebirth.
Is this desire very subtle? Say now we are practicing already. We know we don't want to come back. Yeah. But we don't know really whether our desire is still there or not.
Of course it's there. If not, you're already an arahant.
We have to face it.
Yes.
Okay. And also the third question is saṅkhāra the one that will create the new life as well? Responsible for?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, you see in the Law of Dependent Origination, the second link is saṅkhāra. The first one is avijja paccaya saṅkhāra. Because of ignorance, there is saṅkhāra. And because of saṅkhāra, then there is viññāṇa. And this is supposed to be the patisandhi viññāṇa, or the rebirth linking consciousness.
So Bhante, can I ask, during our meditation, when we meditate, and these saṅkhāras arise?
Which saṅkhāra?
All the phenomena, they'll come one by one by one. What are we to do with them? Are we just to let them pass, like peeling onions like that?
Well, we are supposed to develop wisdom. And wisdom is a sort of karma. If you walk the Noble Eightfold Path, that is the karma that will lead you out of karma. That is the karma that will end karma. All right? If you are not walking the Noble Path, whatever wholesome deeds that you do, if it's not part of the Noble Eightfold Path, which does not lead to liberation, then that will keep you going on in samsara. Wholesome deeds will give you wholesome results. You get reborn as a human being or reborn in the heavens, and then you enjoy pleasures to the senses. Right? So your job as a yogi is to just observe things as they arise and pass away in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, not self, and conditionality, and then get totally disenchanted with all of them. It is because of our innate ignorance in not recognizing that nothing is worth running after, nothing is worth craving for, nothing is worth clinging to, that we are doing it. We are craving for new pleasures, we are clinging on to things that we already have. Okay, so the purpose of vipassana meditation is to look at everything in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta and be totally disenchanted, and then that will lead to dispassion and liberation.
When we are doing this focus meditation, would it not be better if the meditator is doing a repeated movement? For example, the ancient art of wood turning or juggling, the movement that does not require thinking, leaving the mind to keep track of the five senses, focus mind, anchor mind, touch and go. The second question is, would this be the opposite of kasina meditation?
Okay, I explained this in this morning's guided meditation, that open awareness practice is opposite to focused awareness practice. When you try to focus on something in particular, for example, your breath, then you do so to the exclusion of every other thing. And you try to hold on to that breath as your main object of focus. In open awareness, it is the opposite, because we try not to hold on to anything. Free and easy, touch and go. As long as you're aware of something, then ask your mind, what else? And let it go on to something else. So actually both of these can bring about serenity or composure, because the mind is object dependent. If you don't anchor the mind to a fixed object or to changing objects of the five senses, then it will naturally get lost in thoughts about the past or the future or imagination. So you keep the mind busy with a fixed object like your breath or the objects of the five senses. The five senses cannot think. They are just aware of what's happening at the five senses. So that's why, as a first step, we try to disengage the mind from compulsive or obsessive thinking. That's only the first step, After that, we have to go further to investigate into how the sixth sense reacts or responds to what's happening at all the six senses.
Movement is good then at that point, like juggling.
Yep, I also conduct mindful hiking retreats. Yeah, people go hiking in the forest, in stream hiking along the stream. That's a very good way of composing the mind. That's only one aspect of it. Okay.
Something like wood turning and juggling.
Yeah, you can also do painting, you can do whatever that keeps you occupied with your senses and not get caught up in thoughts.
Opposite of kasina.
Yeah, kasina is focused awareness. Here is open awareness.
Thank you.
Right.
Bante, I would like to know about the 5 aggregates in the formless plane.
In the formless plane, there is no 5 aggregates, there are only 4. There is no rūpa because it's formless, no form.
Ask about these few conditionalities in the law of dependent origination. whereby we say viññāṇa paccaya nāma-rūpa. Does this viññāṇa specifically point to the final present life death consciousness, relinking to the next rebirth consciousness?
Well, from the Abhidhammic point of view, that's what it is. It's called the birth relinking consciousness. It is immediately after the death consciousness, then that's the one that goes to the next life.
Because that would explain the death consciousness actually relinking to the rebirth consciousness, and then that actually leads to descent to the mother's womb, and then the arising of name and form and arising of the six sense bases. So that's what I'm aware of. But is there any other explanation?
That is one interpretation, the most popular one. Well, this is not a Paticca Samuppada Sutta study workshop, so I will not go into details about that. I just want to talk about Saṅkhāra.
Yeah, but because there's also one of the Sutta, right, in SN 22.56, it says, with the arising of name and form, there is the arising of consciousness. But like you explained earlier, because the arising of name and form, there is arising of consciousness, and these are the six sense consciousness. And because of the six sense consciousness, there's the arising of, there's a conditioned contact or sense experience. So I guess that is how to interpret it.
Yeah, you can interpret it like in the traditional way, in a linear process from the death of a previous existence, relinking to the present one, and then where the viññāṇa enters into the mother's womb and nāma-rūpa is formed, and then from there it goes on to six senses and so forth, correct? But you can also look at it in terms of once the nāma-rūpa is established in the womb, that nāma-rūpa will also bring about consciousness in the other five senses. Because the initial consciousness, the birth relinking consciousness, is in the mind, is mano consciousness. It is not any of the five sense consciousness. But once it takes root, once it descends into the mother's womb and it fuses with the embryo, with the fetus, then that's when the other consciousness will arise. Yeah. So that's probably how it works.
My understanding of dependent origination actually changes a lot.
Right.
I find that the nāma-rūpa, in this case, even the saṅkhāra is not there. It's actually cetanā, right, in the sutta.
Yeah.
So if you have saṅkhāra, I think it's passive and active. But when it's come to cetanā, am I right, Pandit, there is always active form for cetanā?
Saṅkhāra, in the context of the law of dependent origination and in the context of the five aggregates, are always active.
Always active.
Yes. They are volition.
Cetanā cannot be passive, right? Because in this case, it's translated as cetanā, right, in the name and form.
It is not passive, it is also intentional. It is volitional.
It cannot be passive. What I mean is that for cetanā, unlike saṅkhāra, it can be active form or passive form, right?
No, cetanā is always active.
Always active. That's why I find that it's good, because consciousness has to arise because of some active thing, you see. So cetanā has to be there in part of nāma-rūpa to cause consciousness to arise. And also, you also need contact, as rightly pointed out, so important is contact. And also you need to have attention. Like you said, if there's no attention, your consciousness won't arise. You don't pay attention, then how can the link continue?
No, you see, they all arise simultaneously.
Simultaneously.
Yeah.
But if you lack one of them, it won't arise, right? If you don't have attention, you can't get the consciousness.
No, because you can see phassa is sense experience. Sense experience cannot occur by the sense consciousness itself. There must also be a working sense base and also an obvious sense object. When the sense object and the sense base and the consciousness comes together, then only there is sense experience. Okay? But then consciousness, when it arises, it does not arise independently. It will arise together with the other mental factors like phassa, like, for example, vedana and saññā. Feelings and perceptions must always accompany consciousness. Saṅkhāra is different. It may or it may not. It depends on which sense it is related to. I pointed out just now that when eye consciousness ear consciousness, nose consciousness, and tongue consciousness arise, they don't arise with saṅkhāra. There's no cetanā. You don't have to pay attention when there's a loud sound. Automatically, you have to hear. Correct or not? You don't have to pay attention. You don't want to pay attention, you still cannot.
What about Abhidhamma sense? There is a minor object, great object. So if sometimes people are talking, you don't comprehend what they are saying.
Yeah, but you still hear.
Or you're not listening. Sometimes you're talking to someone, but he's not listening to you.
Yeah, I know, but the
consciousness in your mind.
No, the ear is still aware of the sound. It's just that the mind is not aware of.
Mind not aware.
The mind is not paying attention to what the ear is hearing. But what the ear is hearing does not involve volition at all. It is uncontrollable.
Ear conscious.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I said the four sense consciousness, they arise not because of intention. No intention involved. I was saying that the four sense consciousness, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, they arise without intention. For example, there's a loud sound. Even if you're not paying attention, also you have to hear it. You can't say you don't want to pay attention. Correct?
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying the intention or saṅkhāra need not necessarily accompany the consciousness related to the four senses. Okay? You get it?
So in the context of how name and form causes the arising of the consciousness, in your dependent origination, page 6, it says that arising of name and form, there is arising of consciousness. So when you say here arising name and form means arising of cetanā also, because nama includes cetanā and manasikara. Because it's given that with the arising of name and form, there is arising of consciousness. So by deduction, if there is no cetanā, then there may be not consciousness, in the dependent origination context, but maybe other ways of giving rise to a consciousness.
Yeah, that's true. This is something which is an issue that is difficult to resolve.
Okay.
The way we understand cetanā is supposed to be active, right?
Yes.
But then, as I said, in terms of experience, the four senses don't seem to be active.
Yeah, vipakas arise by themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
All right.
Bhante, when the mind is starting to become void of subtler of formations, how these formations will affect meditator?
What do you mean by the mind becoming subtler?
Subtler, when we are in equanimity.
When you are in equanimity, then the saṅkhāras will be very subtle. That means there will not be a reaction to anything that is desirable or undesirable. When you are in equanimity, whatever happens is okay. And you are able to observe whatever happens if you are doing vipassanā in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta. No proliferations. If there's proliferations, then it's not equanimity.
It doesn't have proliferations. And do you have any choice, I'm asking?
Do you have any choice? Yeah, you have a choice. You have a choice of how you want to respond to what is being observed, right?
There, the choice is there.
Yeah, the choice is there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Bhante, I just like to clarify, because earlier you talked about the mind overriding the body saṅkhāra. I was just wondering, for example, Joe's miraculous healing Dharma therapy that you compiled, is that the citta or is it also the mano saṅkhāra? And how does it work? Is it through the purification process? How does the mind overcome?
Well, according to Mahasi Sayadaw, he wrote a short thesis on how he understands Dharma therapy. He says that when the mind becomes composed, then it is freed of the hindrances and unwholesome states. So when the mind is in a wholesome state, then we have what we call cittaja rūpa, matter born out of the mind. There's matter born out of the mind all the time. Modern scientists have also verified that whatever mental state you are in will produce or stimulate the glands in your body to produce certain biochemicals. If you have unwholesome mental states like anger or stress or depression, then it will produce certain biochemicals in the body that make you feel miserable, right? And that can be the cause of illness as well. Conversely, when the mind is in a very wholesome state, then it also produces wholesome biochemicals, or the wholesome states of mind stimulate the body to produce beneficial biochemicals that will heal the body. That's how he explained it. In Burma, they don't believe in qigong, so I don't know whether they would instruct the yogi to sit absolutely still or to allow the body to sway. But from what I read in Mahasi Sayadaw's instructions, he never asked people to stop swaying. He said, when the body is swaying, know that it's swaying. Be aware that it's swaying. That's what he says. Okay, so if it's allowing the body to sway, then according to qigong therapy, it's allowing the qi in the body to unblock itself and self-heal. All right, hope that answers your question. Does it?
So the mano saṅkhāra is overriding the body saṅkhāra.
Okay, let's put it this way. He's not using the terms in the same way like I do. He says that when the mind is in a wholesome state, then it will produce this biochemicals in the body, which is called matter derived from the mind, which are beneficial to the body and which contributes to healing. What I'm saying just now is that the mano saṅkhāra can override the body saṅkhāra because it wants to move, and the mind says don't move, then it won't move. So if you prevent it from moving, then the qi will not be able to unblock itself, and the ailment may not be healed. Okay, but there's a different explanation from what Mahasi Sayadaw said. Okay, that's as best as I can help you.
Referring to your explanation just now, I just want to clarify my understanding. You say saṅkhāra, when it is the mind saṅkhāra, it creates kamma. When it's body saṅkhāra, it is making our body function, right? So this doesn't create any kamma. Is my understanding correct?
It doesn't create kamma in the sense of bringing it forward to the next life.
Okay. So when this body function, right, it's automatic and it's not controllable, right?
As I said just now, you can. The mind can override the mano saṅkhāra. The mental volition can override the bodily volition. Like I said, during meditation, sometimes the body starts to sway because the qi in the body wants to heal itself. But then if you try to be too clever and then you override it with mental volition and say, don't move, then they are interfering with the body's natural ability to heal itself.
So let's say a sick person, the mind say, I want to get well. Just like you use the example of fighting the virus of, I want to get well, but my body may not be able to get well. So how does that come into the context?
Yeah, it's sometimes like that. The body has got certain limitations in its ability to heal itself. Sometimes the virus or the bacteria may be overwhelming and the body cannot deal with it. Sometimes it can. So it depends.
So in this sense, then the body saṅkhāra is basically uncontrollable, right?
Yeah, it's not controllable. It's working on its own. But you can help it. You can assist it by allowing it to move in the case like I said just now. And in other cases, like for example, you have to take medication to help heal itself.
So basically what Bhante says is we're willingly trying to control the uncontrollable.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question is, when Bhante you share that the four senses are eye, ear, nose and tongue, you associate it as a neutral feeling. There's no positive or negative feeling. But let's say we come back to your simile of hearing a big sound or tasting something bitter, for example, right? Consciously, we will have a perception of negative feeling. Then we perceive that as danger or bad, and then we want to run away or something like that. So how does that saying that feeling is neutral? I thought that feeling could be positive or negative.
No, that feeling is found in the mind. The mind reacting to what the four senses perceive.
Okay, so saṅkhāra create that
from the mind.
For the feeling in the mind.
Yes.
Right? So when Bhante you says the four senses there, the contact with the object is actually neutral feeling.
Right.
Then the mind is the one creating the positive and negative feeling.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's very obvious. One time we were having a retreat in Kundasan, and it was in Mitraville, very high up, 2,000 meters above sea level. So it's a very scenic view. We are on top of the mountain, and it was early in the morning, and so I got all the yogis to sit at the balcony facing the very scenic view, and you could see valleys in a sea of clouds, and then the sun was just rising. I asked them to just practice open awareness, maintain a defocused gaze, and look at what's happening to your mind. So when you maintain a defocused gaze, and you practice free and easy touch and go without allowing your mind to proliferate, there is no sense of beauty, because the sense of beauty comes from the mind. So beauty does not lie in the eyes of the beholder, but in the mind of the beholder. Okay?
Hi Bhante. When can we interchange saṅkhāra and cetanā? In dependent origination and 5 aggregates, we can both interchange saṅkhāra and cetanā, is it?
Yeah, because in the 5 aggregates, it is specifically mentioned. Saṅkhāra is rupa sañcetana, isn't it? It is cetanā related to form, related to sound, and so forth.
So from the Dhammacakka Sutta, there is saṅkittena panchupadana khandas dukkha, right?
Right.
In brief, the 5 focuses of identity are dukkha. So one of the things that people cling to is saṅkhāra. So I was thinking thoughts is saṅkhāra because people cling to their thoughts as I and mine.
Not necessarily. In the Anattalakkana Sutta, the Buddha asked the monks whether any of the 5 aggregates are not just saṅkhāra. All of them are anatta.
Correct. But I was saying that people cling to their thoughts as I and mine.
They can cling to anything. You can cling to feelings, you can cling to form. Some people, they are looking in the mirror every day and I look so beautiful, I look so handsome. They are clinging to form.
Okay, correct. Your thoughts would be categorized under saṅkhāra, correct? Under the 5 aggregates.
Yeah, thoughts, yes. Thoughts are based on what you perceive through the senses. In fact, as long as we are dependent on the 5 senses for our perception of what's happening in the world, all our thoughts are based on that.
Yes, but the thoughts can also arise on their own.
Yeah, but thoughts arise in terms of concepts instead of words and all that. And all these concepts and words are based on objects of the senses.
Okay, because I was thinking cetanā is a subset of thoughts. Is it not?
Yes, it is. Thoughts include saññā, perception, and saṅkhāra, vedana, and consciousness. You can't have any thoughts without consciousness. So thoughts is a very imprecise term that involves all the 4 mental aggregates.
My next question is, why is volition needed? It's because of volition that form arises, that perception arises, consciousness arises. One of the examples just now is because of the intention of taking nutriment, that is why form arises, correct?
Okay, that this form continues to be there.
Even without volition, taking nutriment itself will result in the form going on.
How can you take nutriment without volition?
Let's say a baby needs to be given food.
Correct. The baby will also start to cry if it's hungry, right?
But then that would mean that hunger is the cause of rupa, not intention is the cause of rupa.
No, if you're just hungry, the intention is to make noise so that somebody can be alerted and I want to eat something so that I won't be hungry.
But the baseline is hunger, not intention.
No, it's the intention of wanting to eat to satiate the hunger. If there's no intention to eat, you can feel hungry and die. Then your body won't function. Even if you're hungry and you have intention to eat, but there's nothing to eat also, you'll die, right?
Yes. Then my last question is, in the Kajaniya Sutta, why bhikkhus do you call it form? It is deformed. That is why we call it form. Deformed by what? Deformed by cold, deformed by heat, deformed by hunger, deformed by thirst, deformed by contact with flies, etc. It is deformed. Therefore, it is called form. I don't really understand this.
No, this shows that he is referring to the physical body. You know, he's using conceptual terms to define something which most people say is ultimate. You still get flies and things deformed in the sense of destroyed or damaged or less than what it is, because it's playing on the word. If you look at the Pali, it says rupati, rupatiti, rupang. Rupati is a play of the word rupa. So Bhikkhu Bodhi is trying to maintain that play of words by using the word form, because it's a definition of rupa as form. All right, so he's using it deformed, that's why it's called form.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
All right.
What is the meaning of saṅkhāra? It is hoping that you can relate the first section in D1 when you try to introduce saṅkhāra through the Sutta, the dependent origination, where it is said that saṅkhāra have three types: the bodily formation, volitional formation, the verbal, and the mental. And then now you come to the D2, you're talking about it in the context of the 5 aggregates.
Correct.
Then how do you relate this? Because the D2 talks about 6 types of volitional formation, saṅkhāra. So how do you relate? Surely there must be some harmonious relationship between the first saṅkhāra that Buddha mentioned in dependent origination and the second one in 5 aggregates.
Okay. I already touched upon it earlier. I said that saṅkhāra in the context of the dependent origination means all volition that will give result in a future rebirth. All right? And so the law of dependent origination is not applicable to an arahant, because the law of dependent origination starts off with ignorance. Arahant doesn't have ignorance, so the whole view stops occurring. But the 5 aggregates are different. The 5 aggregates are applicable to everybody, whether you are an arahant or not. And if you are an arahant, the saṅkhāras involved in the 5 aggregates will only help to maintain and sustain this body for this life, and it will not go beyond that to produce another 5 aggregates in the future. That's for arahants. For non-arahants, the saṅkhāras will sustain the body in this lifetime, as well as create the karmic force for generation of future aggregates in the future existence. Can you get it?
Okay, now only when you bring in arahant and non-arahant, then only you can explain these 2 contexts. Is that it?
Yeah.
So without bringing in the arahant, they have to be read separately. They have to be understood separately.
It looks like it all don't make sense.
Which it doesn't make sense to this mind. So I just want to make sure that I understand correctly, so that I don't try an attempt to...
Yeah. As I said, you must always look at things or understand things in context.
Okay, and then in D1 and D2, nama and rupa seems to be common in both the dependent origination and the 5 aggregates. So the question now is nama and rupa a bridge? Yet at the same time, nama and rupa is mentioned in the context of consciousness in the 5 aggregates, whereas nama and rupa, now I can't remember in D1 how is it raised in what context. So I would like to know the nama and rupa relationship with the saṅkhāra, combining these 2 suttas together.
I think one of the presenters has already pointed out that in one sutta, Āyasmā Sariputta said that they are like 2 sheaves of grass leaning against one another. They are interdependent. That's why in the Paticca Samuppada or law of dependent origination formula, you have consciousness is a condition for nāma-rūpa. Right? Whereas in the explanation for the 5 aggregates, it is nāma-rūpa is a condition for consciousness. Correct or not? And so to reconcile these two, the other sutta was quoted, where it is said that these two are interdependent.
Yes, that I understand. My understanding is there is a turning back. When you come to nāma-rūpa, and then it turns back to consciousness. So I do understand it in that sense, but I would like to understand nama and rupa with saṅkhāra. What is the relationship?
Nama includes also cetanā, right? Cetanā is saṅkhāra.
Okay, so only from that fact. Because saṅkhāra seems to be such a big word, bigger than cetanā. Cetanā seems to be like, can understand, but saṅkhāra seems to be like, wow, so huge.
It seems like in the law of dependent origination, after consciousness, we have nāma-rūpa. And after nāma-rūpa, we have the 6 sense spaces. And then we have phassa after that, contact. So it seems that cetanā at that point is not so significant. And it becomes significant only after sense experience. And then there's feeling, and then pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling, and then there's craving. And that's where the saṅkhāra will start again.
Okay. And to your last questions, group discussion, how do you understand the nature of saṅkhāra? There is a view that, simplistically put, saṅkhāra seems to be, from the sutta, a construction worker. Whatever mental factors that come into its space, it will want to construct. And it only constructs conditioned mental factors, including itself, including some conditioned id saṅkhāra. Is that it?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
The difference between cetanā and saṅkhāra, especially in this nāma-rūpa, nama here is cetanā. Yeah, I think we mentioned like just now that cetanā and saṅkhāra.
I just explained to the sister, I just said that cetanā is also found in the nāma-rūpa as a link after consciousness in the law of dependent origination. But it doesn't seem to be significant because prior to that, there is saṅkhāra that causes viññāṇa, all right? It's so-called rebirth consciousness. And then the rebirth consciousness settles into the womb, into the fetus, then nama and rupa is generated. That's because once it takes root in the fetus, then it will, based on what is already produced by the mother, and it will contribute to more nama and rupa. So because what enters the womb is only the mind consciousness, not the other 5 sense consciousness. So probably after it enters into the womb, then with the help of what is already produced by the mother and father, then it will start to produce the other sense consciousness. Okay?
Thank you.
Bhanteji, my question is related to the same confusion about cetanā and saṅkhāra.
Right.
Are they overlapping, or is saṅkhāra bigger than cetanā, or cetanā is bigger than saṅkhāra?
I think they are overlapping. All right. So in the definition of saṅkhāra in the 5 aggregates, saṅkhāra is defined as rupa sañcetana or saddha sañcetana. Volition related to form, related to sound, related to smell, related to taste, related to touch, related to mind objects. So it seems that cetanā is also part of saṅkhāra. But the interesting thing is that the rest of the 5 aggregates, means the other 4 aggregates, are all in the singular, but saṅkhāra is in the plural. Some scholars say that's why the commentary took this opportunity to dump everything else that is not under vedana, saññā, and viññāṇa, or feelings, perception, and consciousness, under saṅkhāra, because it's in the plural, whereas the other 3 are all in the singular. Okay, so there is an overlap. I can't say which one is a superset and which one is a subset. Okay? All right.
Bhante, one question, you mentioned just now one statement. When you give the example of the virus attack the body, you say volition oblivious to the mind. I think you are referring to the body function itself. To me, volition is something that I know. If I search the dictionary, volition means the will, the decision. So can you please clarify on that one? Thank you.
Like I said, The body has got its own volitions. When, for example, a bacteria enters the body has its own saññā. The body consciousness, accompanied by saññā, will be able to recognize that bacteria. And it will know, oh, this guy came in before. And in the past, the body had used a certain sort of antibody to combat this bacteria. All right, so having recognized that and remembered what they did in the past, then the body consciousness, accompanied by volition, will instruct the respective glands or the related glands to produce the right type of antibody at a certain dosage to combat this bacteria. And it will also instruct the other body systems, the other organs in the body, to behave in a certain way to help in the overall battle against this intruder. Okay?
Just want to clarify, so it is correct, volition can be oblivious to the mind.
Volition that is accompanying the body consciousness.
Okay. But then volition accompanying verbal, then no, right?
No.
Just now Bhante mentioned about thoughts is a complex thing. I heard other people suggested that thought actually is the initial and sustained application as explained in the mental factors. Can Bhante please comment on that?
Yeah, you can also look at it that way. But the way we understand thoughts is a bit different. When you say you are thinking, it's not just the activity of initial application or sustained application of your mind or something, but you are involved in concepts and perceptions. Correct, right? So it's not just the activity of initial application, but it involves also a host of other mental factors.
So is that why Bhante mentioned the word thought actually is a complex thing just now?
Yeah.
One last question about Paticcasamuppada. In our presentation earlier, in my group, we mentioned two things. We interpret Paticcasamuppada as things to do with rebirth. And the other one, we mentioned that it is moment to moment, where all the 12 dependent origination, the 12 links happen together, concurrently. Is this kind of explanation right or wrong, Bhante?
I don't know, because this is not a study workshop on the law of dependent origination. I know that in the canonical Abhidhamma, there were many pages devoted to explaining the Paticcasamuppada in terms of a single moment, rather than in terms of 3 lives. I've not read it though, but I have read somewhere, some scholar who said that.
But what is your position, Bhante? Do we use Paticcasamuppada for rebirth?
Oh, right now, for this workshop, I have been using it in that way. But I have not really studied it very comprehensively because it's too complicated.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I believe that it is not necessary to understand all the 12 links in order for one to make progress in the path. Yeah, if you look in the Sutta Nipata, there's one particular sutta that's called Dvayata Nupassana Sutta, the contemplation of dualities, dyats,
okay,
where you just have to contemplate the cause and condition for a pair, and then that itself could lead to liberation.
Wow.
A single pair of 16 pairs, any one of the 16 pairs can also lead to liberation. Right, the first one is the Four Noble Truths. Okay, look that up. Dvayata Nupassana Sutta. All right. Okay.
Often when we talk about mind, people associate that with the one who knows. So is it any indifferent compared to consciousness, and that is the conditions that brings to the rebirth?
I mentioned earlier that I created a modern simile of a glass of water. Yeah? And consciousness is the pure distilled water. What colors that glass of water are the other solutes that are put in. Water is a solvent, all right? So consciousness is a solvent. It is colorless. But the other things that are put into that glass of water, like perception, the feelings, and the saṅkhāras, these will determine what sort of thing is happening in the mind. So the sense of I is not created by consciousness. Consciousness is only the solvent. It is created by wrong view, saññā, perception, and saṅkhāra, volition. Okay?
In that case, what is the difference of the 5 aggregates of a human being compared to animals like a dog or a cow? Do they also have volitional formations?
Yeah, of course they have. They have mental, they have verbal in sense of making sound, but the dogs do bark and tigers do growl, don't they? So that is a verbal volitional formation. And then if they attack some prey, that's a bodily verbal formation, correct?
And that generates karma as well?
Of course. That's why the Buddha says that once you become an animal, the possibility of coming back to become a human is very, very slim.
Got it. Thank you.
All right.